You've been in Berlin now for a couple of days. Germany isn't exactly like the first stop for many African filmmakers. However, having said that, this festival, Afrikamera, and also some initiatives befriended with Afrikamera, we are trying very much to step in, be there, create a platform, and create a scene. What is your impression of the festival? How do you perceive it, like from Ghanaian, but also maybe British point of view?
Well, I'm very, very impressed by Afrikamera. I think you've created an audience for African films in Berlin, and looking at the demand for tickets, the way the cinema halls have been full, shows that you're doing something right, in the sense that whether it's through publicity of social media or the newspaper, people are coming in their droves to have a taste of Africa and to see African artists doing their things on the screen, whether it's documentary makers or as films. And so I think it's really, really encouraging as somebody from the continent to come here and to have people interested in the debates around the representation of African women on the screen, the participation of African women in the film industries. I'm really overwhelmed, actually, by the warmth of the response and the interest that Afrikamera has been able to generate in Berlin for African films.
You, as a Ghanaian documentary filmmaker, having just accomplished a very important and a film that has a lot of impact worldwide, what is your ambition? What is your vision as a woman filmmaker? Where do you want to see yourself, let's say, in a year or 2 years from now?
Well, I'd like not to be broke. I'd like to have some money. I've set up an NGO, which is a sort of production company in Ghana called Fadwa Films. And the aim of Fadwa Films is to make films about African women, by African women, for African women. And Witches of Gambaga was our first film, but we've also made a film about women politicians in Ghana, about how they managed to combine so many different facets of their lives with, being mothers and wives and also being politicians at a local level. And we're at the moment making a film about Ama Ata Edu, who's a Ghanaian novelist and playwright and poet, a very important feminist writer in Africa. And we've managed to do the filming, and we're now trying to raise funding to complete the film. And I just think it's very important for African women to actually record and document our histories in a way that we feel proud of and we can actually share with other women on the continent, because we cannot expect Europeans to be doing it for us. I think Europeans have their own agendas and their own priorities, and African women, unless it's sort of to do with crisis or some, we have to create our own agendas and make our own films for ourselves.
This is a rather large question. I apologize in advance, but would you be able to tell something about the specifics of the Ghanaian film industry when you compare it maybe to its neighboring countries in West Africa or within the entity of the whole sub-Saharan continent? What makes the Ghanaian film industry different?
I think Ghana was endowed with a very good documentary tradition at independence. The old West African colonial film unit actually left all their equipment in Ghana. So Ghana had a very strong documentary tradition. And I think under our first leader and early leaders, the use of film for propaganda and for information spreading was paramount and important. But like many African countries, we've had the most tremendous political upheavals, which meant that the infrastructure that was there has disintegrated. The the ministry, the archive that we had was stored at the Ministry of Information, is now spoilt because it's not being kept in the right conditions. However, in spite of this, in Ghana, Ghana was actually the first country in West Africa to make straight-to-video films. Fast turnover, quickly scripted, quickly, and straight to video for sale. We actually started it, and then Nigerians ended up copying it and have now built a huge industry around it. The population of Ghana is much smaller, but there is a small film industry, and we are gaining some women directors like Shirley Frimpong-Manso and Lila Jansi are gaining international recognition, and Kwa won FESPACO many years ago. But the fact is, to be a sort of a filmmaker in a country like Ghana is very, very arduous, because most of your clientele are actually NGOs who want films made, UNESCO, Save the Children. They want sort of films made for that with particular messages. So films that are made for television or made for cinema are much harder to get off the ground. But still, people are still making films, and struggling.
Maybe a last question to you. What is your most favorite Ghanaian film ever?
I think I find the films I really enjoy tend to be Francophone films. I'm much more into the Francophone cineast sensibility. And I think one of my favourite films of all time is Sembini Usman's Molade, which I think is a magnificent film. And I saw that in Ouagadougou in 2005, and in a cinema hall which was absolutely packed. People were sitting in the aisles. I was lucky. I'd been to see the film before that screening, so I had a seat. And people would say to me, I have friends who have worked in Hollywood, and say, well, of course, African films like Molade, they're not made for Africans. I would like them to have been with me in that cinema hall where teachers, civil servants, just ordinary people, not international filmmakers, or where ordinary Burkinabe were there, and the discussions we had afterwards. Africans can take all sorts of films. It doesn't have to be second-rate B-movie type films. Complicated films about important social issues will get people talking. Yeah.
So thank you very much.
My pleasure.